Hello, welcome to Recover 360, a podcast dedicated to exploring the pathways to treatment and recovery, brought to you by Recovery Centers of America. I'm Loraine Ballard Morrill, Director of News and Community Affairs for iHeartMedia Philadelphia. I am joined by Tony Luke Jr. Tony?
Hi, Loraine.
Hello.
Another show?
I know, this is awesome.
I'm so excited. We're really helping a lot of people, I hope,
Yeah.
And we're thrilled to be your guide on this journey towards better understanding the world of healing and the many ways individuals find their way to recovery.
In every episode, we'll sit down with experts, survivors, and advocates in the field of treatment and recovery. We'll unravel the complexities of addiction, mental health, and physical wellness while shedding light on the diverse range of therapies, interventions, and approaches available. In today's episode, we'll do a deep dive into the stigma attached to addiction, as well as the role of spirituality. Understanding and addressing stigma is essential in creating more compassionate and effective approaches to addiction prevention and treatment.
And joining us from Recovery Centers of America are Dr. Peter Vernig, who serves as Vice President of Mental Health Services, and Pastor Jason Krail, Special Projects.
Yeah,
Appreciate
Tony.
you having us.
Yeah, Tony, I think this is such an important conversation to have because stigma is one of the great barriers that prevent people from getting involved in recovery. And as we talk about spirituality, we're not talking about necessarily organized religion, right?
Sure.
And I know spirituality has been very important in your life.
It has. I mean, I don't think I would have gotten through Tony's death, my son, if it wasn't for understanding the higher power, understanding the journey that we are all on. And I think that the stigma associated with addiction is the same stigma associated with mental health and trauma. And it's, words are very powerful. And I said this before,
Yes.
And people are very affected by words. And at the risk of repeating myself, because I have said this before, that heroin took my son's life, but the stigma is what killed him. And I have made it my life's journey from then on to combating the stigma, because I think that is the greatest arsenal that addiction has in its toolbox is stigma. And we keep playing into it, and shows like this, I'm hoping with every fiber of my being, will help to eradicate that stigma and let people understand that these are real human beings that are suffering from an illness that is destroying them and their family.
Well, let's talk to our experts here. Maybe you can share with us your idea of what stigma is. What is it all about? What is your point of view regarding stigma? Dr. Pete?
Absolutely. So, stigma, one of the most important points that I always talk about with stigma is something you already brought up, Loraine, the fact that it is a barrier for people getting into treatment. Stigma isn't just unpleasant. It's not just painful. It's not just difficult for patients and families to deal with. It actually is dangerous because it keeps people out of treatment. Just imagine, this in another area of healthcare. Imagine cancer patients, and imagine if our society told cancer patients, you should just sort of figure this out on yourself. And imagine if cancer patients' families were told, and it's probably their fault actually that this happens. So, this is something you want to keep quiet, keep it in the family, don't talk about it. Imagine if the healthcare system told them the same thing, and imagine people not getting life-saving treatment because of that stigma. That's what people face in substance use treatment. They face being blamed for their illness. They face being told that it's not a big deal. It's something that they should just work out on their own. And they face being told that this is a secret, shameful thing that they shouldn't share with others. And as we've talked about in here before, it's talking about it, it's getting it out there, it's having open dialogue that's so important for people living with a substance use disorder. So stigma is something that is one of, I think, the greatest barriers to treatment and care for people who live and struggle with substance use.
Pastor Krail, how does it show up?
Yeah, so as a pastor in long-term recovery myself, coming up on 13 years,
God
following.
bless.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm sorry for your loss as well. So I know what it's like, as a heroin addict. I've been in multiple prisons. I've been in foster care when I was younger for a little bit, and so I've been in and out of these different things in Philadelphia for a long time. So I know what that stigma feels like on a personal level. And now that I got sober for quite a while now, and I even have this pastor title to me, like I take that very serious. And to Tony's credit, it's like, I tell people where they're at. I meet them where they're at. I don't care what you believe in at this point of your life. Like, I don't care if you believe in God or you just believe in good. Just know that I believe in you. And like when I come with that powerful message of hope to somebody who's stuck in the margins of society, you see the light come on just a little bit. It doesn't matter where they're at in their active addiction either. I feel like for me, the God that I serve, I don't get to pick and choose who I get to help. So I do know where people are if they do have that stigma attached to them. I think we've come a long way, right? As far as the stigma is concerned, we still got a long way to go for sure. But from when I got, sober over a decade ago, I think we have made progress, because the worst thing you could do to somebody who is actually feeling defeated in their life is to make them feel even less than they already do. So like, I always look at people and I tell them, you have intrinsic value no matter where you're at right now. And I know just from my own personal experiences that there is hope and recovery is real. But I think as far as the stigma is concerned, we need more people bringing awareness. Absolutely. But we need more people tying up their boots, right? And like getting into the trenches with these people, like I know a lot about the Bible, obviously, as a pastor and all these things. Patients and people that are stuck don't care about that right now. What they need is love and compassion when everybody else around them has, folded on them. So I think that's like a pretty big part of, decreasing the stigma right now. But stigma 100% will keep people sick more than it'll get them well. That's just the, common experience that we see in addiction recovery.
Tony, one of my earliest memories is watching a movie about marijuana, and it was just so sensationalized. And you smoke the marijuana, next thing you know, you're shooting up heroin. So there's so much in popular culture that reinforces that image of the person who's in addiction, and such a negative point of view, just really portraying that individual as someone who made a bad choice rather than has an illness, right?
Yeah, I think we tend to forget that, and I'm guessing for everyone I've spoken to, 90% of the people that are struggling in active addiction are self-medicating a much deeper issue. And we've never looked at it from that point of view. And I think that was also a reason that helped perpetuate the idea of the stigma, because we were so concentrated on sobriety. Like we never, you don't, the last conversation we had was a great term that he used. A doctor never tells someone, come back to me when you have stage 4 cancer and then I'll treat you. And that was at the, one of the podcasts we had done. And that really hit home for me. Like it really resonated with me. You can't tell someone they shouldn't be eating all that food because now you're fat shaming someone. So in our society, there's shaming for everything except for the people that are truly suffering and dying in record numbers from suicide and overdoses with mental health and trauma and addiction. No one cares about the shaming there. Like it's okay to use the word junkie. It's okay to say, well, it's your fault. No one goes to someone who has cancer and says, well, if you didn't smoke or you didn't do this, then so I don't feel bad for you because you got cancer. You brought it on yourself. If someone were to say that, they would get destroyed. Yet people feel it's okay to say that and to treat people that are suffering with addiction. That's okay. Like that's acceptable. It's not. It is not acceptable. And this is what we need to get out to people.
Well, Dr. Vernig, demonizing addiction has a long history, not only in popular culture, but also our government. Just say no. The whole, all of the campaigns that the government has been engaged in for these many decades, I wonder if we can talk more about how our culture and how our government has contributed to this stigmatization of addiction.
Well, for a long time, substance use disorders, as well as mental illness, these were seen as things that are a character flaw or
Yep.
a weakness or a spiritual deficit. And absolutely, there is a spiritual component to a substance use disorder and to recovery, but it's not that a person is wrong or has failed and needs to make up for that failure. But these old beliefs really pervaded the field for such a long period of time, and hundreds of years of belief that this is something that someone's done to themselves or a choice that they've made or the consequence of their behavior, that doesn't go away immediately, which I think is where a lot of this comes from. And as you pointed out, this has gotten codified as well into our laws, into the way even that our insurance reimbursement system works. So when you look at things, anti-drug programs like Just Say No, which I certainly believe nobody had negative thoughts at the time. Nobody wanted to, create something that wouldn't be helpful. But the idea that the problem was just as easy as, just say no to a substance that has taken control of a person's life and that has created physiological dependence and symptoms, and that they may be using to medicate pain or depression, anxiety, trauma. The idea that we could just say no to that or just make the decision immediately, flippantly, right off the bat to change that without any support, sort of belies that idea that it is a choice somebody is making. So, everywhere from drug policy to some of the laws surrounding substance use in the past have not been focused on treatment.
No,
For the longest time.
incarceration.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're focused on incarceration. They're focused on criminalizing as opposed to getting people into treatment. And, to your point, Pastor, that started to change. And it's really wonderful to see recovery courts and diversion programs and starting to see the legal system look at it as a medical issue, not as a failing of the person or this is somebody who needs our punishment and our scorn. This is somebody who needs help.
That's right. They need to be like walk through a process. I love what Tony was saying because, even like before I started abusing substances, my home life was absolutely terrible for any child to grow up in. That's just, and I'm know who I am today, so I know what I'm not. But at the time, I was just a scared little kid because I lived in this violent home. My father eventually passed away, his liver started giving away and things like that. But, when I first started abusing substances, I wasn't like, all right, I'm going to smoke this, weed or whatever. And wine. I didn't like fast forward and think, oh, well, you might be under the Somerset Bridge one day shooting heroin. Right. So like, it wasn't like that. And it wasn't necessarily what the drugs did to me. It's what they did for me, because I was already suffering from some trauma in my home. I didn't have nowhere to turn. At least I felt that way. And if I felt like, especially in my neighborhood and with my family, if I would have sought help somewhere else, my mom was a saint, but she couldn't help me as much as I needed to be helped. But I felt like there was some stigma even within the home dynamic. I really believe that like a lot of this stuff comes from the past that we've been through. In order for us to really get down to the causes and conditions, the substance was just what I started using, but the underlying symptoms extend way past that. And to Dr. Pete's message, it's so true. I got caught up in the system at an early age. And we're talking about substance abuse disorder. I've had it for sure, but we're talking like minor offenses. And then it turned into a felony. And then the felony, I couldn't walk off probation to save my life because I couldn't stop using. And they would ask me to come to court or to the probation department. What would I do? I wouldn't show up. Why? Because I know I can't, pass the drug test. So I wouldn't go. I don't want to waste anybody's time. And then when they caught me, I would do a whole year for absconding, a whole year, when really I couldn't stop shooting heroin. Yeah. And I just needed help. But yet they put me away. And, I'm grateful for all the things that I've been through in my past because it's made me what I am today. Okay. But, I do think that there's better ways. And I do think, not to get off on a tangent about government stuff, because I do believe the system is designed, especially to keep mental health and people who suffer from substance use disorder in chains. Like, I do feel like it's like that because the recidivism is just insane.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of the common stereotypes associated with addiction, and how do you perceive them to contribute to the stigma?
You want me to share? Yeah, sure. Well, I say 100% that people like talk down on people and say that they're a failure, that they're never going to be able to get this. My mom, you know, I have 2 older brothers, and none of us were Boy Scouts. I'll just tell you that. All right. We're all good now. Praise God for that. But we weren't Boy Scouts. We were heavy in the streets. So my mom developed this tough love mentality. Looking back, yeah, it served its purpose 100%. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for a mother's love. And if a mother's love could have kept me sober, you would have a different speaker right now. So let me just start off by saying that. But I don't think she understood how to deal with that either. She would just tell me to get out and leave. Like, you know, nobody wants somebody like me around them. The only problem she had is she had me in her house, right? But I think as far as that's concerned, people look down as this as a moral failure. And it's absolutely not. I agree that there's many different ways to recover and all that. I don't have a monopoly on this thing. I do not. I just try to love people and meet them where they're at. But I will say, you know, as far, it's like, for me, it's like a mental, you know, health disorder that we have going on in our country, and it's shooting up crazy. If you look at the numbers right now, it's not stopping. There's no end in sight. Addiction treatment is only barely scratching the surface. The recidivism rate, even in addiction treatment, is scary because we're trying to treat this disorder that is, it's kind of hard. And I'll let Dr. Pete speak on that a little more. He's a little brighter than me when it comes to that. But I do think, as far as like the availability of people, I think we can only heal and only get better if we look at other people as people. They're having a human experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I have to admit, words are so powerful,
Amen.
right? And this was years ago, but I don't know if, you know, for people who live in Philadelphia, Emerald Street was a place where there was an encampment, and I was covering a rally, an anti-drug rally, and I went down there and I was doing like Facebook Live, and I used the word junkie because I didn't know any better, right? And then someone live streaming said, "Loraine, don't use that word." And right then and there, I was caught short. I said, "Oh, you know what? That's right. I shouldn't be using that word," because by definition, that word has negativity attached to it, right? It's to say someone has substance use disorder takes all of the stigma away from the word. There's so many different words that we have for people who have substance use disorder, right? And vast majority of them are negative.
Sure.
And so the language is so important. And so when I learned to use substance use disorder, I also felt inside of me a shift in my own attitude, right? And so words are so, so important. Now, Dr. Vernig, how about addiction stigma? And Pastor Krail talked about it a little bit, because certainly within your family, there were certain attitudes and certain opinions about where you were at. And that influences their behavior in relating to the person who has the substance use disorder. So tell us more about how stigma really impacts the family and the loved ones of individuals struggling with substance use disorder.
Well, one of the things that stigma does is it isolates. It isolates the family from the supports in the larger community, and it can isolate the person from the family. So the belief that that the person has made the choice for themselves, the idea of, you know, even just the language like you talked about, using words like junkie or clean, where the opposite of clean is obviously dirty or wrong, or you know, looking at somebody living with a substance use disorder as being the other or being less than is something that it closes off communication, or it limits that communication with family members. So if this is something shameful, this is our shameful family secret, it's something we communicate about quietly. It's something we communicate about in the shadows. It's not something that should be out there in the world. And if we're keeping it really close-knit and tightly together, then we're much less likely to get those other supports that we need for the family, for the individual who is living with the disorder themselves. So what it does is it's such an and substance use disorder is an isolating disorder to begin with. It's something that cuts people off from society, from family, from hope, from support. And to have this additional layer of isolation in place is something very harmful, harmful for people, harmful for families, and harmful for the communities that they live in.
Right.
That's good stuff. Yeah, Loraine, you brought me back to my, you know, my active use with my own mom, who's, you know, like I said, shout out to Judy. She's a saint, love her. And, you know, addiction is 100% a family disease. There's no doubt. It's such a family disease. And like I always say, like when we talk about in recovery, especially in addiction treatment, we talk about treating the whole person. But if you're not actually treating the family, you're not actually treating the whole person. right? Because you got to take it from the person to the family, and then even more is in the community. You got to be able to give this person, great treatment and keep the family component, because unfortunately, when I started using, things started getting missing, right? That's just the facts. I'm not proud of that whatsoever. But my mom, I would take anything from her. But think about this. I took money, absolutely. I stole from her, but I also stole pride. I also stole sleep. I don't know how many times that her and my stepfather stayed up at night arguing about me as their kid, right? Stuff that I can never actually give back. So when I come home and I'm saying I'm going to do better, my mom's like, yeah, sure. We'll believe it when we see it. And even just that, I'm like, I bought that. That's what I tell myself. But, truth be told, it is a family disease. And if you're not treating the whole person and the whole family, the chances of recovery, drastically are reduced. That is, proven time and time again. So,
but it's impossible. The stigma makes it almost impossible to treat the family because they're so petrified of someone finding out, because we're drilled they drilled it in your head that the weakness of someone, you don't want someone thinking that your child is weak or your child is dirty or your child
they
is
feel
a
like
thief.
it's an indictment on their
Exactly.
parenting.
As well.
And they don't know, hey, look, I'm telling you right now, I always tell it exactly the way it is. I was that person that was like, why can't you just stop? Why, you know what I mean? And then you don't get it until you get it. And I always say, you don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Yeah.
So, but then again, I'm going to throw some blame out there too, to social media, to the regular media, and in the past, okay, there are leaps and bounds now, better, okay? But in the past, those people that were involved in who you trusted with your child to help them or your loved one were abusing and taking advantage of them. So it was all of this mounting up, and the people don't know where to go. They don't know, there's no handbook on it. There's no absolute work, like you said. There's no one size fits all. But if there's an open discussion where you can listen and speak freely and try to understand, eventually you may speak to someone who hits a nerve on what you're dealing with or has been through what you were going through that makes sense to you to pull you out of that. And you're right. Look, life is hard. Okay. And people can become weak from it because it's easy to be beaten down. Very easy. It's hard to stand up, and when you do stand up, praise you. God bless your strength, but know that there are a lot of people don't have that kind of strength, and they need you to help stand them up. And that's where we need to get. Families need to let go of this image and stigma that they're dealing with and be open. And I think that that's the first line of actually helping people that are in active addiction and that are struggling, when they know that their family is not ashamed of them, because they feel ashamed. And that is a cycle that just keeps going round and round, and we just keep losing people that we shouldn't.
Definitely. And I would also say to that, you bring up a good point. When I deal with families, because I deal with them a lot, and I love that, right? I think it's so important. You see like two extremes. One's like, I'm kicking this person out of my house, get out. I don't want to ever speak to him again. And then the other one is like loving them to death almost, right? It's like, no, we need to fix them. When the truth is they can't, right? That's the truth. And I think that there's something called, we always miss this, is healthy boundaries, right? And it's different for each person. See, I don't want to ever try to appraise such an intimate situation with a family. I've had enough of problems with my own family. I'm a father of 3 now with a wife. I feel like I'm doing a good job. I'll let my wife tell you that answer. But I really think that these things called healthy boundaries, like, we're going to help you up until this point, but if you're going to be doing that, we can't, or whatever. It's going to be different for each person. But I really, like Tony was saying, the last thing you want to do is, condemn this person. That's what you see across the board. And even with social media and all these other things, you should see some of these websites and people posting different things, what they're calling these human beings.
Yes.
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And best idea wins, where I come from. right? It doesn't matter who the messenger is. I don't care. If I want to post and I want people to live, right? That's like my whole position on recovery and life in general. And you can't do that unless you get compassionate. And we all have to be compassionate to the person who's still stuck in the margins of society.
I think that's such an incredible point, because there are many sites that come out of Kensington where they're showing people in active addiction, shooting up, nodding out, all those things. And it's almost like a kind of porn in a way, because people are fascinated by it. But again, you're looking at someone in a very judgmental way, and that's not cool at all. I wonder if we can talk about those boundaries. I love what you just said about that. And maybe we can explore that a little further, the healthy boundary part, because I think, as Tony and your mom, were saying, like, you got to do this. You love your child, but, it's do or die, or you get clean or you get out, all those different things that people go through as parents. And I wonder if we can talk about those healthy boundaries. I like that phrase because it puts it in a whole different context. Pete?
So I think that, excuse me, I think that the pastor made a very good point about the fact that it's not one size fits all. So, I wouldn't want to be prescriptive in the same way that I wouldn't tell two people living with a substance use disorder that they have to do the same thing to recover, and recovery always is going to look the same way. For families, it's not going to look the same, because different families have different concerns, they have different situations, they have different backgrounds. But I think that when it comes to healthy boundaries, what we're talking about is that we're going to provide support. We're going to provide love and caring for the person, but also, and I'm a little bit leery of using the word, but not enabling. And the reason why I'm leery of using the word is that I think that not enabling gets thrown around very easily and has actually been used in a very stigmatizing way in the past. But when we talk about not enabling, we simply talk about how we're going to provide positive support for the person, but we're not going to inadvertently do things that encourage them to continue their pattern. And, when we look at the way that our behavior affects another person, we can never know that for sure ourselves. I mean, we are so in it every day that the way that the words that I use, the language I use, the way that I talk, how that affects another person close to me, how it affects my loved ones, my family members, my friends, I'm never going to be able to see that because I'm in that relationship. I'm right there in that interaction. But being able to get that outside view of, when you say, get clean or get out, as you said, that's not actually helpful. That doesn't make the person want to change their behavior. It actually makes them more resistant. It might make them feel less likely. It creates inferiority. It reduces them and reduces what they're going through, or that they're trying to just, as you put it, love them to death. That all they want to do is provide support, and whatever you need, I'm going to do, and everything that you want, I'm going to give you. That, on the other end of the spectrum, that's not helpful either. But if you think about relationships and parenting and friendships and all interpersonal relationships in general, it's the same way. You don't want either one of those two extremes where somebody is closed off to others and making demands and insistent, versus if they're giving in and not giving feedback and just acquiescing to everything. So, it's sort of a microcosm of our relationships in general.
So as a father, parent, everything that you said, I 100% agree with, but there are some real life facts that have to be understood. When you're looking at your child, especially as a parent, and you know that if you give them money as they're begging for money because they're in so much pain, that you could get a phone call that they're dead. But if you hold back that money and you don't give them that money, you can get a phone call that they went out and they did whatever they needed to do to get the money and they're dead. So as a parent, you're put in an impossible situation because there is no answer that gives you any hope that the phone call won't come, because everyone is living every day with someone who was struggling, waiting for the phone call to come. So I need to ask you, how does spirituality play a role in not only addiction recovery and rehabilitation, and also what are some of the common spiritual or religious support systems in addiction treatment and recovery that you can talk about? Because I said earlier, spirituality was something that saved me. Without it, I don't know what I have done, but that's me as an individual. What are your thoughts on that?
You want me to go? Yeah. So I always look at like as a Christian pastor, right? Like that's what I follow. But I also look at people that don't believe in the same thing as me, right? There's a message in the Bible that says, take the log out of your eye before you judge somebody else's. And I got a pretty big one most days. You know, I'm an extra grace required kind of pastor. So like I have no room to judge anybody. Point blank, period, the end. But I'll say, as far as like the role that spirituality has played in my life and faith. So I would talk about faith. Faith and reason aren't so far apart as some people think that they are. Right. It takes some faith to have reason and reason to have faith. Right. So like that's what you got to work on with people in recovery. It's like, well, I don't believe in nothing. Well, we all believe in something. That is true. Like I said it before, whether you believe in God or you just believe in the power of good, or you believe that the sun's going to rise tomorrow, we all have faith in something or someone. It wouldn't be life if we didn't. So that's first and foremost. I meet people where they are, but the role that it played in my life, I can't minimize what it's done for me. You know, I serve a radical God personally, and he radically has changed my life. And he sends me back into the margins to get these people that are sick, broken. This disease wants to kill you. I mean, it is a life and death errand. There's no doubt. You know, I passed away 3 times from my disease, and I was brought back to life prior to the fentanyl thing that came out. If fentanyl was around right now, you would have a different speaker, definitely. There was no chance that I was going to do it after a decade of IV on and off for a decade of IV heroin use. But the role that faith, like I have faith every morning, right? I wake up and I hit my knees and I ask the God of my understanding, my higher power, allow me to be helpful to somebody else. It gives me a sense of purpose. See, that's what we're all searching for, is this sense of purpose. And I don't tell the people that I'm working with or helping or whoever to follow me to my church. I don't do that, right? I don't. Like, do I want them to? Of course, that's my heart. I'm a pastor. But as long as they're following something, right? And not your old way of life. See, I see faith take the old and make something new. As Tony alluded to, faith in, you know, his God and his higher power has helped him through a lot of things too. And even people that just don't believe in that, faith in something is there. I promise you, it's an essential component to life itself. I always have faith in the wrong things. Today, I have faith in the good things of life, and has given me my primary purpose to go help other people that don't have any faith. There's people that are stuck in Kensington 100% right now that don't have faith in anything except wanting to die. And to come and actually motivate people like that and stand beside them. And it's not just as, you know, take a picture like you were saying. I mean, that's just the minute you start magnifying that, it becomes exploiting. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if you get down there and don't use a phone and you just use your, you know, language, like you said, words matter, and you let them know that you care. But more importantly, you're not done yet. I'm going to be here tomorrow. How about this? And after tomorrow, I'm going to be there. It shows that you actually have faith in them. And now they start to build upon that faith. As far as institutions, I mean, obviously there's so many different 12-step meetings out there for people. There's people that don't believe in God that has some type of 12-step work, the Buddhist path and all these other things. And it gives you a sense of community, right? So it's not just go to church or any of these other things, but once you get part of a community of people who are like-minded, who's been through the things that you've been through, but more importantly, they know the way out. Now you actually have a sense of belonging, and we're all trying to do that. So I always felt like the disease is mental, physical. Obviously, we have this physical factor, and of course, spiritual. So we need to treat all 3 of these with other people who has been through the process before, that knows the process, that actually genuinely care from the bottom of their heart, right? That they're going to be with you every step of the way.
That's right.
The way I've heard that explained best is that it's something outside of oneself. It could be a God that they believe in. It can be a religion, spirituality. It can be a fellowship of individuals coming together, a community. It can be family, but it's something more than oneself. It's something outside. It's something supportive, and it's something that they can rely upon when they need it, because people do need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I may say something that might be unpopular, but I do that. So
Go for it, Tony.
Spirituality, for me, religion, you know, I believe with every fiber of my being there's no religion on the other side. We made it. We that's just my personal opinion. Okay, and I do have a very strong faith, and I strongly believe in God. But when you use religion and even spirituality as a crutch to hold yourself up, you will fall. Because the first person, the first one that matters, the first belief that you have to have is in you. Because when you have faith and belief in you, spirituality and even religion, if that's where you are, now becomes part of you, not the crutch that you're using to stand on. It becomes part of your makeup. So I always tell people, I get all the 12 steps. I get all of that and I understand it. But please understand that you need to believe in you first before spirituality or any religion that you believe in can make a difference. It's not a crutch. It is supposed to be part of who you are, and it can't be if you don't believe in you.
In the end, whether you believe in a higher spirit, God, go to church, don't go to church, go to temple, don't go to temple, it all boils down to love, right?
Yep.
Love. That's the common denominator in all of the positive things that spirituality can bring to us. And I love what you said, Pastor Krail. I love your journey. I love that you're here to share with us your own story, because your story is an inspiration.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm blessed to be here. I mean, it's an important topic, and me and Tony were talking prior to this, and it's about the language of the heart, right? It really is.
Language of the heart. I like that.
It's so important to have when you're speaking to somebody, just in life, right? Like, I'm not just a pastor for people, abusing substances. I'm a real pastor. Like, my God has put me in a position to be helpful to all people. I always have an open door policy. I mean, God forbid I don't reach out and help somebody. I've been blessed with this life beyond measure. There's a saying from an old pastor that I really love, and I actually use it as like a pillar in my own life and in my own walk, and when I'm dealing with people who don't necessarily believe in what I do, and that's fine. We can always agree to disagree. I don't know what happened in our culture where it's like, well, I don't agree with that, but it's okay. I love you anyway. I don't know what
understand
happened.
that either.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But this pastor, he's been long since deceased, but I listen to him all the time. S.M. Lockridge, I'll give you the quote, but he says, you can have a pocket full of pearls, but without string, you're never going to have a necklace. Now, every single person, whether you're in substance abuse or not, just humans, we're all having a human experience, unfortunately, right? Sometimes it's unfortunately. Life gets lifey. Every person is a pearl in his or her own right. But if we don't come together as a whole, as a humanity, this extends past mental health and all these other things, but especially mental health. If we don't come together as one, as a human, relating to another human, we're never going to be effective in anything that we're doing.
Beautiful. Dr. Vernig, if people want more information about Recovery Centers of America, where do people go?
Sure. If anyone's interested in learning more about Recovery Centers of America, you can go to the website rcarecovery360.com or call our toll-free number 844-25-RECOVERY.
And Pastor Jason Krail, if people want to check you out, how do they do that?
Yeah. So you could just look on, I actually work for RCA too. So, but you can call me. I don't care. 267-398-0690. My phone's always on. My wife is a saint, by the way. She'll know I wake up at 1 a.m. and it doesn't matter where you're at in your life, or if you're struggling with addiction, feel free to give me a buzz. I'm here for you. And that's how it'll always be for me.
I love that. I love that. Recovery 360 isn't just about stories of survival from substance use disorder. It's a resource for those seeking answers, support, and hope. Whether you're personally navigating the challenging terrain of recovery or you're here to learn how to be a better ally, this podcast is a source of information, inspiration, and empowerment.